The Discovery and Resurrection. The rust-colored nebula stretched across the viewport like a cosmic bloodstain, its swirling gases illuminated by the distant pulsar that served as Outpost Omega's unreliable timekeeper. Nikolai Voss wiped grease-stained hands on his already filthy jumpsuit and squinted at the readouts on his diagnostic panel. The station's primary oxygen recycler was failing again, the third time this month, and Administrator Hobbs had made it abundantly clear that replacements weren't coming. "Piece of garbage," Nikolai muttered, adjusting his toolkit strap. At 38, his once black hair was already streaked with premature gray, and deep lines carved valleys around eyes that had seen too many makeshift repairs and desperate workarounds. Outpost Omega was where engineering careers came to die, and Nikolai's had been on life support for years. The station itself hung at the edge of the Cygnus Void, a region of space notorious for strange gravitational anomalies and the mysterious disappearance of ships. The Commonwealth fleet avoided it. Commercial vessels gave it a wide berth. Only scavengers, fugitives, and the truly desperate ventured into its depths, which explained why Nikolai called it home. "Voss, you have that recycler online yet?" The voice crackled through his comms unit. "Administrator Hobbs, right on schedule." "Working on it, sir," Nikolai replied, forcing a calm he didn't feel. "The primary coolant line is. I don't need the technicals. I need air that doesn't smell like the inside of a Zortian waste processor." The connection cut before Nikolai could respond. With a sigh that seemed to come from his very soul, he returned to the tangle of tubes and circuits that kept 200 people breathing. His fingers worked with the precision of decades of experience, intuiting solutions where manuals and specifications failed. 3 hours later, the recycler hummed to life, its readouts showing green across the board. Nikolai allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction before gathering his tools. It wouldn't last, nothing here did, but it would hold for now. And in this forgotten corner of the galaxy, for now was often the best one could hope for. The station's common area buzzed with the usual mix of off-duty workers, traders passing through, and the occasional mercenary nursing a drink and old wounds. Nikolai claimed his regular spot at the bar, nodding to Janek, the four-armed Terradian bartender who slid a glass of amber liquid across the counter without being asked. "Fix the air again?" Janek asked, his secondary arms polishing glasses while his primary ones mixed drinks for other patrons. "Until it breaks tomorrow," Nikolai replied, taking a grateful sip. The synthetic whiskey burned pleasantly as it went down. The large view screen above the bar cycled through various news feeds from across the Commonwealth. Wars, politics, celebrity scandals, the same distractions that had occupied humanity for millennia. Nikolai paid little attention until a familiar face appeared on screen, Admiral Octavia Rhodes, the legendary fleet commander whose tactical brilliance had ended the Proximan conflict. She was announcing a new defense initiative, her uniform adorned with enough medals to sink a small vessel. Nikolai's gaze lingered on the ships behind her, gleaming Commonwealth dreadnoughts, their hulls unmarked by struggle or straying. How different his life might have been if the Commonwealth had recognized his potential rather than relegating him to this cosmic backwater after his theories on Xenotech integration were deemed recklessly innovative. "Those pretties wouldn't last a week out here," came a gravelly voice beside him. Nikolai turned to find himself face to face with an ancient spacer, skin leathered by radiation and age, a scar bisecting one milky eye. The man's jumpsuit bore no insignia, but the peculiar curve of his utility knife marked him as a salvager, someone who made their living recovering valuable scrap from derelict ships. "What makes you say that?" Nikolai asked, curiosity piqued despite his weariness. The salvager grinned, revealing teeth filed to points in the style of the Outer Rim colonies. "They build, pretty, not practical. No redundancies. No adaptability." He took a long swig from his flask. "Not like the old ones. The forgotten ones." "Forgotten ones." The salvager leaned closer, his breath sour with cheap synth alcohol. "Found something out in the deep drift. Something big. Ancient. Alien-made, but unlike anything I've seen in 40 years of cutting up dead ships." Nikolai's interest was genuinely piqued now. "What kind of ship?" The kind that makes Commonwealth dreadnoughts look like children's toys. The salvager's one good eye gleamed. The kind that could change the fortune of whoever claimed it. Too big for me, though. Too dangerous. Lost 2 of my crew just trying to dock with it. Nikolai sipped his drink, considering. And you're telling me this because? Because I've been watching you, Voss. The way you fix things others can't. The way you understand tech that isn't yours. The salvager pulled out a small data chip and slid it across the bar. Coordinates. Sensor readings. The ship's still there, dormant but not dead. The Celestial Sovereign, they called it once. Flagship of a civilization that vanished when humans were still figuring out how to make fire. The next morning, before his shift began, Nikolai found himself in the station's dilapidated archives, hunting for any mention of the vessel the salvager had described. References were scarce, fragments of myths, unconfirmed sightings, theoretical analyses of ancient power signatures detected in the deep drift. The Celestial Sovereign was legendary among xenoarchaeologists and military historians alike, a warship of unprecedented size and capability, created by the enigmatic Meridian culture that had dominated the galaxy before their sudden disappearance 8,000 years ago. Most believed it destroyed or lost to the void. But the salvager's data told a different story. The ship was real, and it was waiting. It took Nikolai 3 weeks to formulate his plan. 3 weeks of calling in Favus, quietly acquiring supplies, and studying everything he could find about Meridian technology. Administrator Hobbs grew increasingly suspicious of his sudden interest in the station's outdated long-range shuttle. Preventative maintenance, Nikolai explained when questioned, his expression carefully neutral. The gyroscopic stabilizers need recalibration. On the 20th day, with his preparations complete, Nikolai submitted his resignation, a one-line message sent from the shuttle as he disengaged from the station's docking clamps. The small vessel shuddered as its engines fired, pushing it toward the coordinates that had consumed his thoughts since the night in the bar. The journey to the deep drift took 11 days, each passing hour amplifying both Nikolai's anticipation and doubt. The shuttle's limited life support systems recycled the same stale air until his lungs ached for freshness. Sleep came in short, fitful bursts, his dreams filled with visions of ancient metal and dormant power. When the shuttle's sensors finally detected a massive object at the designated coordinates, Nikolai's hands trembled on the controls. The view screen showed only darkness at first, then adjusted to reveal a shape that defied comprehension, a titanic vessel partially concealed within a field of asteroid debris and cosmic dust. The Celestial Sovereign was unlike any ship Nikolai had ever seen. Its hull was composed of overlapping plates that resembled scales, each the size of a small shuttle. The vessel's form suggested both organic and geometric principles, curves that flowed like water yet adhered to mathematical perfection. What might have once been gleaming metal was now tarnished with cosmic radiation and micrometeorite impacts, giving the Leviathan the appearance of a wounded god. Nikolai guided his shuttle toward what seemed to be a docking bay, a cavernous opening in the ship's side. The salvager's warning about losing crew members echoed in his mind, but determination pushed fear aside. As his vessel crossed some invisible threshold, ancient security systems stirred to life. Warning signals flashed across his console, and the shuttle's engines sputtered and died. The small craft drifted into the massive bay, pulled by the remnants of what must have been a gravity-based docking system. With a metallic groan, the shuttle settled onto the deck, its systems completely unresponsive. Donning his EVA suit, the one luxury he'd splurged on for this mission, Nikolai cycled through the airlock and took his first steps aboard the legendary vessel. His helmet lights cut through darkness that had remained undisturbed for millennia, revealing a docking bay large enough to house dozens of ships the size of Commonwealth cruisers. The air was thin but breathable, suggesting that some of the ship's life support systems remained functional despite the passage of time. Nikolai's suit sensors detected no immediate toxins, but he kept his helmet sealed as he ventured deeper into the silent giant. The corridors seemed to shift and realign as he traversed them, forcing Nikolai to mark his path with phosphorescent trackers. The ship's interior architecture followed the same paradoxical principles as its exterior, organic curves executed with mathematical precision, materials that had withstood thousands of years without degradation. On the third day of exploration, Nikolai discovered the bridge, or what he assumed was the command center. Massive viewports looked out into the void, while control interfaces unlike anything in Commonwealth technology lined the walls and central platforms. Most remarkable was the chair at the center, sized for a being far larger than human scale. It was here that Nikolai encountered the first sign of active intelligence within the ship. As he approached the central platform, the deck beneath him illuminated with soft blue light that followed his footsteps. The control surfaces pulsed in sequence, and a holographic display flickered to life above the command chair. The image coalesced into a form that was vaguely humanoid yet distinctly alien, tall and slender with too many joints, its face a symmetrical arrangement of luminous points that might have been eyes, sensors, or something beyond human understanding. "Intruder," came a voice inside Nikolai's helmet, bypassing his comm system entirely. "Biological entity detected. Authentication required." Nikolai froze, heart hammering against his ribs. "I'm not an intruder," he said, unsure if the entity could understand him. "I'm here to help. To restore." The holographic figure tilted its head at an angle that would have been impossible for a human neck. "Ship status, critical. Core functionality, 17%. Authentication required for system access." "What authentication?" "I don't." "Genetic compatibility test initiated." Before Nikolai could react, a beam of light emerged from the command chair, scanning him from head to toe. Pain lanced through his body, brief but intense, as if every cell was being individually examined. "Anomaly detected," the voice announced. "Genetic template partially compatible. Provisional access granted." The holographic figure dissolved and reformed, now displaying the ship's schematics, a three-dimensional maze of systems, chambers, and conduits. Red indicators far outnumbered the green, depicting the extensive damage and decay throughout the vessel. "I'm called Nikolai," he said, stepping closer to the display. "What should I call you?" The hologram pulsed. "This vessel's designation is Celestial Sovereign. This interface is designated Custodian." "Custodian," Nikolai repeated, studying the schematics. "I want to restore this ship. Make it function again. Is that possible?" "Affirmative. With provisional access, limited restoration protocols are available. Full functionality requires proper authentication and adequate resources." Nikolai smiled for the first time since arriving aboard the ship. "Then we'd better get started." The weeks that followed tested the limits of Nikolai's ingenuity and endurance. Working with Custodian, he prioritized critical systems, power distribution, structural integrity, and basic life support. The ship's self-repair mechanisms, dormant for millennia, slowly awakened under his guidance, nanobots swarming through damaged sections like microscopic restoration crews. As the Celestial Sovereign stirred from its long slumber, Nikolai made contact with a selected few from his past, individuals whose skills would be invaluable and whose discretion could be bought or earned. Zonner Ketch, a pilot whose recklessness had seen her discharged from the Commonwealth fleet. Jefferson Obo, a xenobiologist whose theories had proven too radical for academia. Domingo Reyes, a security specialist with a price on his head in 3 systems. One by one, they arrived in ships as battered and overlooked as they themselves were, drawn by Nikolai's promise of purpose and redemption. Each reacted differently to the massive alien vessel and its slowly awakening systems. Zonner saw freedom in its potential speed. Jefferson lost himself in studying its biological components. Domingo assessed its defensive capabilities with professional admiration. But all recognized what Nikolai had known from the first moment he'd laid eyes on the Celestial Sovereign: this forgotten titan, once restored, would change the balance of power throughout the galaxy. And those who controlled it would never again be overlooked or discarded. As the ship's systems continued to revive under their collective efforts, Nikolai found himself spending more time with Custodian, learning the history of the vessel and the civilization that had created it. The Meridians had been a species of builders and philosophers, their technology an expression of harmony between organic and inorganic principles. The Celestial Sovereign had been both their greatest achievement and their last stand, a vessel designed to preserve their legacy when their civilization faced extinction. Why did they die out? Nikolai asked one cycle, as he worked to restore power to one of the ship's secondary reactor cores. Custodian's holographic form flickered. Data corrupted. Historical archives indicate conflict with unknown entity designated the Void Directive. No further information available without full authentication. The mystery only fueled Nikolai's determination. Each system they restored revealed new capabilities and secrets, from gravitational manipulation technology that could shred enemy vessels to terraforming protocols that could transform barren worlds in days rather than centuries. But their activities did not go unnoticed. Long-range sensors, newly repaired, detected Commonwealth scout ships at the edge of the deep drift. Mercenary vessels, likely hired by rival salvagers, ventured closer with each passing day. And strange energy signatures, unlike anything in Custodian's database, occasionally flickered at the very limit of detection range. As the Celestial Sovereign's power levels rose and its presence became impossible to conceal, Nikolai knew that the time for working in secrecy was ending. Soon, they would face those who sought to claim or destroy what they had begun to restore. The Forgotten Titan was awakening, and the galaxy would tremble at its return. The rising power and final test. The Celestial Sovereign's central chamber hummed with energy that made the air itself feel charged. Nikolai stood before a three-dimensional display of the galaxy, watching as red indicators multiplied across the map. Each represented a vessel or fleet moving toward their position, drawn like predators to wounded prey. 14 Commonwealth cruisers approaching from the Alios corridor, reported Zonner from her position at the navigation console. Her fingers danced across controls that had been designed for appendages different from human hands. ETA 26 hours. The cartel fleet is closer, Domingo added, his scarred face illuminated by the tactical display. 17 ships, heavily armed. Mercenary signatures. They are not even trying to mask their approach. Jefferson looked up from the biological interface he'd been studying. And the anomalies at the edge of the Cygnus void are intensifying. Whatever they are definitely moving this way. Nikolai absorbed the information with outward calm, though his heart raced. In just 3 months, they had accomplished what should have been impossible, restoring nearly 60% of the ancient vessel's functionality. The Celestial Sovereign was now capable of movement, basic defense, and limited offensive capabilities. But they were still far from unlocking its full potential, and time was running out. Custodian, Nikolai called, what are our options if confronted by these forces simultaneously? The holographic entity materialized beside him, its alien form now familiar after countless hours of collaboration. Current operational capacity is insufficient for prolonged combat against multiple adversaries of this caliber. Recommend evasion protocols. Run and hide, Domingo translated with a snort. Typical AI thinking. We're not running, Nikolai said firmly. This ship has survived 8,000 years. It can survive this. He turned back to the galaxy map, focusing on a particular region. Zonner, can you get us to the Tannhäuser Nebula? The pilot frowned. The radiation levels there would fry our shuttle's systems in minutes. But not the Sovereign's, Nikolai countered. Its hull composition can withstand radiation that would melt Commonwealth alloys. Understanding dawned on Zonner's face. A natural fortress. We could repair there without interference. Precisely. And anyone following us would be at a severe disadvantage. Nikolai turned to Jefferson. How's your progress with the biological systems? The xenobiologist's eyes gleamed with excitement. Fascinating beyond belief. The Meridians integrated organic components into every critical system. The ship isn't just mechanical, it's partially alive, capable of adapting and evolving. Can those systems help us now? Jefferson hesitated. Possibly. I've identified what appears to be a dormant neural network throughout the vessel, something far more sophisticated than Custodian. If we could activate it. The risk factor is significant, Custodian interjected. Awakening the core consciousness without proper authentication could trigger defensive protocols. And what exactly are defensive protocols in a ship this size? Domingo asked, voicing the question in everyone's mind. Unknown, custodian replied. Such information requires higher authorization. Nikolai made his decision. Set course for the Tannhäuser Nebula, maximum sustainable speed. Jefferson, continue your work on the biological systems, but don't activate anything without consulting me first. Domingo, I want defensive countermeasures ready for deployment the moment we arrive. As the others moved to their tasks, Nikolai remained at the central platform, studying the approaching threats. The Commonwealth would want the ship for its military potential. The cartels sought profit from its advanced technology. But the anomalies at the edge of the void worried him most, unknown entities with unknown intentions. Custodian, what's in the secured chamber on the lower deck? Nikolai asked quietly, once the others were out of earshot. The one that's been locked since we arrived. The holographic figure flickered slightly. That information requires higher authorization, Nikolai finished. I know. But whatever's in there might be our only chance if those fleets catch up to us. Custodian was silent for several moments, its luminous face unreadable. The chamber contains the Sovereign's primary weapon system, a device the Meridians called the Void Harvester. Its power source is derived from the same energy that permeates the space between dimensions. Nikolai's breath caught. Can it be activated with my provisional access? Negative. The Void Harvester requires full genetic authentication and core consciousness integration. And how do I achieve that? Another long pause. You would need to undergo full neural synchronization with the ship's biological components. The process is irreversible and potentially fatal to non-Meridian life forms. Before Nikolai could respond, the ship's alert system blared to life. Domingo's voice came through the intercom, unknown vessel approaching at impossible speeds. Nothing should be able to move that fast. Nikolai raced back to the bridge, arriving just as the main view screen displayed their pursuer, a sleek craft of obsidian black, its hull seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. No visible engines, no recognizable design principles. What the hell is that? Zunner whispered, her hands frozen over the navigation controls. Custodian's hologram appeared, its form unstable with apparent agitation. Void directive vessel detected. Threat assessment, terminal. The name sent a chill through Nikolai. The mysterious enemy that had driven the Meridians to extinction had returned, drawn, perhaps, by the reactivation of their ancient nemesis's flagship. Evasive maneuvers. Nikolai ordered, but it was too late. A beam of something darker than darkness lanced from the pursuing vessel, striking the celestial sovereign with unerring precision. The ancient ship shuddered violently, and warning indicators flared across every console. Direct hit to primary power distribution. Jefferson reported, clinging to his station as the deck tilted beneath them. Biosystems are going into shock. Secondary hull breach on decks 7 through 12, Domingo added grimly. Whatever that weapon is, it's cutting through our defenses like they are not even there. Nikolai made a decision that would change everything. Zunner, keep us moving, random course changes, maximum unpredictability. Domingo, divert all power to shields and countermeasures. Jefferson, come with me. They raced through corridors that pulsed with emergency lighting, the ship groaning around them like a wounded leviathan. Reaching the secured chamber on the lower deck, Nikolai placed his hand on the access panel. Custodian, emergency override authorization, Nikolai Voss, provisional commander. The massive door remained sealed. Custodian's hologram appeared beside them, its form now constantly shifting and rebuilding itself. The Void directive vessel is preparing for another attack, the AI reported. Structural integrity at 63% and falling. The next hit will likely disable primary life support. Open the damn door. Nikolai shouted. You know what's out there. You know what they did to your creators. Are you going to let it happen again? Custodian's form stabilized momentarily. Neural synchronization protocol initiated. Access granted. The chamber door slid open with a hiss of ancient seals breaking. Inside, bathed in pulsating blue light, stood a crystalline structure reminiscent of a coffin or stasis pod. Cables and conduits spread from it like veins, connecting to the ship's walls, floor, and ceiling. The Void Harvester control nexus, Jefferson breathed, his scientific curiosity overtaking fear. It's beautiful. And our only chance, Nikolai said, approaching the structure. Custodian, what do I need to do? Enter the nexus. Complete neural synchronization. Become one with the sovereign. Jefferson grabbed Nikolai's arm. You can't be serious. Custodian said it could kill you. And if I don't, we all die anyway. Nikolai gently removed Jefferson's hand. Get back to the bridge. Whatever happens, keep the ship moving. Reluctantly, Jefferson departed, leaving Nikolai alone with Custodian and the ghostly blue light of the Nexus. Will I still be me? Nikolai asked quietly. After the synchronization. You will be more, Custodian replied. Unless. The Sovereign will become an extension of your consciousness, and you an extension of its. Another violent tremor shook the chamber as the enemy vessel struck again. Alarms wailed throughout the ship. No more time, Nikolai murmured, stepping up to the crystalline structure. Its surface parted like liquid at his touch, enveloping his hand, then arm, then entire body as he stepped forward. The sensation was beyond description, pain and pleasure intertwined, every nerve ending simultaneously deadened and heightened to impossible sensitivity. Nikolai felt his consciousness expanding, stretching to encompass the entire massive vessel. He could sense every corridor, every system, every molecule of the ship's being. Most importantly, he could sense the dormant power nestled at the Sovereign's core, the Void Harvester, a weapon designed to manipulate the very fabric of space-time. Through the ship's sensors, Nikolai perceived the enemy vessel preparing for another attack, a killing blow. With a thought, he diverted power to the shields precisely where the strike would land. The Sovereign shuddered but held. What's happening? Zonner's voice reached him, though he no longer heard it with ears but through the ship's internal communication systems. Nikolai has achieved neural synchronization, Custodian's voice replied. He and the Sovereign are now one entity. On the bridge, the crew watched in awe as the ship's systems began operating at unprecedented levels. Damaged sections sealed themselves, power flowed more efficiently, and defensive capabilities increased tenfold. The enemy vessel launched another attack, but this time, the Sovereign was ready. Its shields absorbed the dark energy, converting it into usable power, a function no one had known existed until Nikolai's mind unlocked it from the ship's ancient memories. With newfound confidence, Nikolai, Sovereign turned to face their attacker. The Void Harvester hummed to life, drawing energy from dimensions beyond normal space. The weapon manifested not as a beam or projectile but as a localized distortion in reality, a sphere of nothingness that expanded from the Sovereign toward the enemy vessel. Where the distortion touched, matter simply ceased to exist, erased from the universe as if it had never been. The Void Directive ship, seemingly invincible moments before, disintegrated piece by piece, unable to escape the inexorable advancement of non-existence. Within minutes, no trace of the enemy remained, not even debris. The distortion collapsed back into itself, the Void Harvester returning to dormancy. But Nikolai's trials were far from over. As his consciousness settled into its new expanded state, he became aware of the approaching Commonwealth and cartel fleets, now just hours away. Through the ship's vast databanks, now fully accessible to his integrated mind, Nikolai understood the true nature of the Celestial Sovereign. It had been designed not just as a warship but as an ark, carrying the essence of Meridian civilization, their knowledge, their art, their philosophy. The ship's biological components contained the genetic legacy of a species that had sought to transcend extinction through transformation rather than reproduction. And now, that legacy lived within him. When the Commonwealth fleet arrived 15 hours later, they found not a derelict ruin but a fully operational vessel of awesome power. The Sovereign hung in space before them, its once tarnished hull now gleaming with renewed energy, its defensive systems active but not yet engaged. Admiral Octavia Rhodes herself led the approach, her flagship maintaining a respectful distance as communications were established. Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Octavia Rhodes of the Commonwealth Fleet. You are in possession of technology deemed critical to galactic security. Surrender and prepare to be boarded. The response came not as words but as a direct neural transmission that bypassed the Commonwealth ship's communication systems, projected directly into the minds of every officer and crew member. I am Nikolai, and I am the Sovereign. This vessel is neither yours to claim nor a threat to your security, unless you make it so. Aboard her flagship, Admiral Rhodes felt a chill run down her spine. The voice in her mind carried not just words but emotions, images, and intentions, a form of communication far more profound than language. The Celestial Sovereign will not be used as a weapon of war or a tool of oppression, Nikolai continued. Its power exists to preserve and protect, not to destroy without purpose. What are your intentions? Rhodes demanded, struggling to maintain her composure. To continue the legacy of those who came before. To explore. To learn. To ensure that what happened to the Meridians never happens to humanity or any other sentient species. An image formed in the Admiral's mind, the dark ship that had attacked the Sovereign, and the terrible void it had brought with it. She understood, instinctively, that the threat it represented dwarfed any political conflict within the Commonwealth. And if we insist on claiming your vessel? The response was not a threat but a simple truth, conveyed with absolute certainty: you cannot. To demonstrate, Nikolai activated the Sovereign's propulsion system, not the conventional engines but a gravity manipulation field that bent spacetime around the massive ship. In the blink of an eye, the Sovereign vanished from before the Commonwealth fleet, reappearing 10,000 kilometers away. No ship in known space could move like that. No defense could stop it. No weapon could catch it. The message was clear: the Celestial Sovereign could not be captured or controlled by force. It would go where it willed, do what it deemed necessary, and answer to no authority but its own conscience. That conscience, fortunately for the galaxy, remained fundamentally human despite its expanded perspective. Nikolai had not lost himself in the integration but had instead found a greater purpose, becoming the guardian of a legacy that spanned millennia and the protector of a future threatened by forces from beyond normal space. In the months that followed, sightings of the Sovereign were reported across the galaxy, appearing to neutralize pirate fleets threatening colony worlds, providing advanced medical technology to planets ravaged by disease, and venturing into the uncharted regions beyond the Commonwealth's borders. The crew remained with their transformed captain, loyal to Nikolai even as he became something more than human. Zonner piloted smaller craft that the Sovereign could now generate autonomously. Domingo coordinated defense and security operations. Jefferson continued his research into meridian biology, making breakthroughs that would eventually revolutionize medicine throughout inhabited space. And as for Nikolai himself, the engineer who had once been relegated to fixing oxygen recyclers on a forgotten outpost, he had found his true calling. Not as a conqueror or destroyer, but as the caretaker of a power too great for any single nation or species to control responsibly. The Celestial Sovereign, once a forgotten relic of a dead civilization, had become a symbol of hope and a reminder of humanity's potential to rise above its limitations. Through Nikolai's unique human perspective, his ingenuity, his determination, his capacity for both rationality and empathy, the ancient vessel had found new purpose. From scrap to supreme, the Starship had been resurrected. And only a human could have done it.